Hi, and welcome to the Keys to Therapy. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about what grad school was like for me. I know that there's multiple different types of grad school programs out there, different paths you can take, some of which I touched on last episode. So I want to specifically talk about my program and what that was structured like and how grad school was for me. In the future, I'm going to ask every guest what their experience was like in grad school so the audience gets a good wide view and range of what different programs at different schools, different times, what all of that looks like, because I think that that's really helpful in choosing a path or also sometimes in validating what your own path was, whether that was good or bad. So for me, like I mentioned before, I ended up choosing the MSW, Master's in Social Work path. So my specific program was 2 years, and it was structured that the first year was more macro based, because with social work you could do macro or micro or both. So it was more macro based the initial first year, which was more so classes on like policy and research and things along that end on like a much broader scale of social work. So Monday and Tuesday you would go to your internship, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you would be in classes, most of which were around like 3 hours. And then once a month, I believe, you would meet one evening to talk about your internship. So you were in a small group, and that professor was also like your on-site supervisor. So they would communicate with your on-site supervisor. So they would come out and they would talk to your supervisor every other month or so, see how the internship was going, meet with the three of you and discuss, pros and cons and things like that. So it was nice to be in a smaller setting to be able to talk about specifically internships, what your experiences were and things along that line, so people could kind of like compare and contrast the different settings. So for me, a few months before starting grad school, I was emailed a list of different internship possibilities and then had to rank a couple of them. And then from there, the school would set up interviews with some of the people. So I took a year off between undergrad and grad school because I wasn't sure exactly which degree path to go. So in that year I took off, I worked at a residential facility, and it was inpatient. Well, it was residential, but there was people who lived there and there was people who would come there during the day. So some were outpatient technically and some were residential. And it was a program that was set up for people who were found not guilty by reason of insanity or incompetent to proceed with court because they had some sort of charges. But they also had, for the most part, paranoid schizophrenia was the major diagnosis. So some people would live in this facility. So my role with just a bachelor's in psychology, kind of limited with what you could do, but I did like psychoeducational groups there. So having spent that year with a population with severe mental illness and learning about court stuff and disability and all of those things, I was like, okay, this is a pretty intense experience, to put it mildly. It was an intense experience. I really liked it though. I really enjoyed working in that place, and I learned a lot of stuff there, being basically like a group counselor throughout the day. But what I wanted looking at internships was, I thought in my head, well, I know the ultimate goal is private practice and very clinical work, but I should vary my experience. So what I ended up doing was picking an internship that was completely opposite of what I knew and what direction I was going in, which looking back, I'm like, why did I do that? I think my logic at that point made sense to me of like, you need to broaden your horizons. You might like something different. But I knew myself pretty well at that point, and I should have chosen something more clinical. But that's what this channel's about. It's explaining all the mistakes and the different things that you've learned along the way. So hopefully maybe not everybody has to go through that or feel validated in what they chose as well. But so I chose an internship at a place that was nonprofit, very much about like artistic things out in the community, stuff along those lines. So there was like one person who was an owner. There wasn't like a home base. She would kind of go to different places and work out of like coffee shops, or kind of partnered with this one small counseling group and learning about like grant writing and stuff like that. But the internship itself was very unstructured. And having come from such a structured job where we literally had a schedule throughout the day of here's when everybody takes their medicine, here's when you have group, here's when you're in the kitchen with the clients cooking, here is when you're doing the afternoon activities, and this week you're on the floor helping the clients, and this week you're in the room planning for the next week's lessons. It was very structured, and I work very well. I'm a planner, so kind of type A. I like the structure. So I had a very difficult time trying to find my place in that internship and to try to figure out what was needed of me and what I could learn from it. But I also was overwhelmed in some ways because I had just moved out of state to go to school for the first time, and I was 23. So I lived on my own in a state where I didn't know anybody in the entire state. And I thought, okay, well, this internship's unstructured, but it also allows me a lot of time to work on school and to do other stuff. So I didn't say anything. I wasn't super happy. I felt like maybe the supervisor wasn't super happy because things were kind of in the works, and I wasn't very flexible. I only had 2 days a week that I was able to be there. I also didn't understand how to use my strengths in some of the settings that I was placed in. And I wanted that client work, and there wasn't much opportunity for that there. So looking back, I should have said something at the time when I was talking with the school. When I was in my internship class, I should have been like, okay, well, I'm not sure that this is working for me. But I was nervous. I didn't want my grades to be affected. I knew that all the other internships were taken, so I didn't know where that would leave me if I spoke up. I didn't want my supervisor to feel like she wasn't doing her job. I just felt like there was so much at stake and so many unknowns that I was like, okay, well, this is what I do know, so I'm going to stay here. And that's hopefully a lesson to any of you guys, that I spent that entire year where, yeah, I did great in my classes because I had a lot of free time in my internship to do the work. So versus I think I would have really preferred to have been in a more clinical setting where I was honing those skills I had already started building at my previous job, instead of going like completely out into left field and trying to do something different. So second year, I was like, I'm definitely going to do something clinical. So I picked an internship that was at a hospital, and I was like, all right, inpatient, let's try that. I did residential. This is kind of similar. And so I absolutely focused on the clinical route. And coincidentally, year 2 of my program was very clinical based. That was where we had classes on like family therapy and group therapy, and there was a class on the DSM and diagnosing and learning about medications and things along those lines. So it was very much clinically focused, and it felt like all of that was a pretty good fit for me. I know some people weren't as interested in the clinical, just like I wasn't as interested in the macro, but it was still nice and a benefit of picking social work in that you have this broader view of not just the person and maybe their world, but the entire system that's in place. So what things are possibly oppressing them? What other barriers do they have within their community, outside of their community, with the government, with this country, with culture, with all kinds of stuff? And so having grown up in Miami, I think that was also very helpful in having a broader program. I know some other programs like LPC or LMFTs, Masters in Counseling or Masters in Marriage and Family Therapy, they have almost all clinical. So although those would have also been a pretty good path for me, I think I like still that social work was broad and just felt like I could see more of the person in the environment and understand the different pieces of their lives, whether they were conscious of it or not, that were impacting them. So in the second year, I was like, yes, I was super excited. And so my internship was, like I said, mentioned, at a hospital. It was a small hospital. One LCSW, one BSW, and then the normal nurses and psych techs and things along those lines. I want to say it was 20 something beds, substance abuse and mental health in like a more rural area. And so I was excited to get to learn all of these things. Well, within my first week, my supervisor made comments that I found to be very inappropriate. Definitely a lot of awkward situations with some of the patients there and some of the comments that were directed towards me. So after being quiet my first year about what was working and what wasn't, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that this year. Plus, knowing it was the second year, and once I graduated, I was out there on my own. I was like, I need to speak up. So I went to the school my first week, spoke with the head of the internships, explained the situation, met with my internship teacher or professor at that point via phone before we ever had the class, because this was a situation that needed to be addressed right away. Addressed that with my supervisor who was on site the following week, set some strict boundaries with what kind of language and situations were allowed and what wasn't. And it was very uncomfortable. But when I first reported it, the school's first thing was, do you want to switch internships? And I didn't feel that was needed. I didn't want to be punished, it felt like, because all the other internships were taken at that point. I did not want to be placed in somewhere else that was either not a choice for anybody else or something they kind of skimmed together for me because of somebody else's negative behavior. So I think second year is when I really started to feel more confident and advocate for myself. It also hit me that how am I going to be in a profession that's so much about advocacy, like social work, and not advocate for myself? It just didn't feel like a good look. And also I was very concerned about if some of this behavior is happening towards me and I'm in a little bit more of a position of power than the patients, I'm a lot less vulnerable right now than they are. What is happening with them? So just some things to consider. I know not everybody is in a position where they can report or they want to report things that are going on or they feel that they can. But in my situation specifically, I knew that I had the school, I had some other places that would be able to back me up, which they did. That resulted in a few weeks later, my supervisor was fired. And there was nobody else on the unit except the BSW. So I suddenly, 3 or 4 weeks into my second year of grad school, had to run the unit. Second year of grad school also, my program was structured where Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you were at your internship for the entire day. And Thursday and Friday was when you took your classes. So it was a busy week. And I was working 45 minutes outside of where I lived. So it was a very, very, very long days, but really rewarding because I got some of that clinical experience. I got one-on-one sessions. I was able to run the process groups. I was able to sit in on some of the other groups that people there were doing, substance abuse groups and recreational therapy and things like that, which was also really interesting. I got to do family sessions and intakes and coordinate with the psychiatrist and do the treatment team meetings and all of these things. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, I'm getting so much experience. And because I didn't have an on-site supervisor, somebody off-site would read my notes and check them. And the psychiatrist, when he was present, would kind of occasionally check in. I was just sort of doing it. I would show up sometimes on a Monday and find out that there had been things that should have been done over the weekend, but because nobody was as close to license level as I was, they would wait for me. So no pressure. It was a lot, but threw me right in. And I loved being able to go to my internship class and talk to some other people to see what their experiences were. Some of my friends were at other inpatient units. Some were at more like macro level placements. And it was just really cool to kind of hear where everybody was at and put those pieces together of what these different potential career paths would look like. So I think to sum all of that up, when you are picking internships for grad school, that's where you're going to do the majority of the learning. Classes are going to teach you a lot about theories, and you're going to do role plays, which are the stuff of nightmares in my world. Like, that is terrifying to me. So I think it is for a lot of people. Actually, we all would pretty much dread role plays, but yeah, I think that is where internships are where you really get the bulk of your experience. You build the most confidence, you learn the most about yourself, and it's kind of like you're in this nice bubble where you're able to be like, but I'm just an intern, so you can get away with a little bit more stuff. So if you don't know things, it's easier to be like, I'm just an intern, and it might still be intimidating to admit what you don't know or to ask questions, but again, you're in kind of a little bit of a bubble where it's a little bit safer to be able to do that. So internships where it's at. So what you don't want to do is what I did first year, and pick something that you know is not really aligned with who you are or your career goals. I think there's other ways to get different types of experience, and I really wish that I had, knowing I was already going to pick a clinical path, I wish that had been more of what I stuck with. And I can see the value in choosing something that's outside of what you know or what you like, but that's a lot at stake. You only have 2 years of grad school, and it might sound like a lot, it might cost a lot, but it's really a crucial time. So my advice for if you are picking an internship would to be to pick one that's really close to your long-term goals, and to also pick something that is within the realm of the population that you're interested in working with. So I know some people who picked an internship and it was aligned with their goals, but they realized after doing the internship that their goals had shifted, or they always thought they wanted to work with kids, but after working with kids and dealing with some of the parents and some of the their own personal feelings about kids and how deeply that affected them, they completely shifted and decided to work with adults or to work with the elderly or some completely different population. I know some other people who wanted to do more clinical work and decided that they wanted to do more macro level stuff and advocacy and policies and things along those lines. So there's definitely a lot that you are going to learn in your internship. And I would say that's the most valuable part of grad school, because as of now, I finished grad school 10 years ago at this point. I finished in 2012. And the DSM's changed twice since then. So, there's a lot of relevance to that class, but things change. Policies change. There's a lot of other stuff within those classes you're going to take that is going to shift and change with the culture, with, legal stuff, with things we all just learned, science, whatever. But your internship is where you really grow a lot and build your personal skills. And that confidence is going to help you a ton when you graduate and you're suddenly out on your own. So some of the things I would recommend as far as getting through grad school, because it is really stressful. Most people don't work a job full-time and then have to take full-time classes 3 hours each and work on all of their papers and do all this reading and also kind of plan for their future and work on a resume and maybe have a life somewhere in there. Most people don't have to balance all of those things at the same time. So it's a really stressful time. So I would definitely recommend that your main focus is to take care of yourself, because everything else is going to fall apart if you don't. So make sure that whatever it is that you do mentally and physically for self-care, working out, sleeping, eating, keeping on a consistent schedule, make sure a lot of those things are in place. The other part is use grad school for the connections, make friends. It's going to help you get through all of that, because maybe you have certain classes where you have the platform to be able to share how you're feeling, but not everybody's going to want to be like, hey, I actually don't know what I'm doing. And they made me talk to 3 clients this week and I felt really stupid because I had no idea what to say. And I cried on my way home from my internship. That's probably not going to be what everybody feels comfortable sharing in class. So make friends. Have those people that you trust who are in the same boat as you at the same time, who you could be like, yeah, I was totally freaking out. I had no idea what to say when this person told me that they were suicidal. And I also was scared to admit that I didn't know what to do to my supervisor because they're grading me. And I also didn't want to bring it up in class because they're grading me too. And I also didn't want anybody else in the class to look at me like I don't know what I'm doing. There's a lot of people who feel that exact same way, but not everybody's going to be able to share that in the class. So make friends, make connections, find the people that you survive with. You help them survive, they help you survive. It's a nice mutual relationship where everybody can just kind of freak out together. That definitely helped me get through school. And also your networking. All of these people in your grad school program are potentially people you are going to work with in the future, or you're going to want to send some of your clients to, or hook your clients up with some of their resources, or have your own resources that you're developing that you want to get out there. And these are all people that you're networking with. So look at it that way as well. The other piece of it, of how to survive grad school, is making sure that you are taking advantage of supervision. And you have to have a good relationship with your supervisor in order for that to happen. And I don't feel like I totally had that first or second year. But once I started working and had a good one, a great one that fit me and similar personalities and worked well and all of that stuff, it really helped. I could go in that office and be like, yeah, I have no clue what I'm doing. and get that support. So try as much as possible to match that up in your grad school program, because your internship, yes, it's a lot about the work, but it's also about the supervision that you get to. So make sure that that's in line. And a lot of the situations that you're in grad school, whether it is in your internship or it's the subjects that come up in class, can be very triggering. So if you have your own history of stuff, whatever that stuff looks like, trauma stuff, abandonment, relationship issues, problems dealing with stress, loneliness, your own mental health stuff, that definitely needs to be addressed in grad school, because there is a lot of things that will come up for you. Not only is it a high stress environment and that can trigger a lot, but sometimes some of the scenarios, the case studies you're reading, the stories that you are hearing directly from some of the people you're working with or in some of these classes can be a lot to take in. So a lot of universities offer usually I think it's around like 12 free sessions. So look into that and see what you can get from the University Counseling Center. If that's not enough, then look into getting your own therapy outside of the school, because it's going to be really important, not only in how you survive grad school, but in building your confidence as a therapist and learning how to control your triggers. And also in just feeling like a more healed version of yourself, which is going to make you a better therapist. There is a lot of people in this field who go into this field because of their stuff, but they never fully work on their stuff. So their stuff comes out on their employees, on their coworkers, in their relationships, sometimes even with their own clients. So you want to make sure that you are taking advantage of this time that you can be in that intern bubble and really work on yourself as much as possible. And the last thing with how to survive grad school is to make sure that you have some sort of structure and schedule to your week, because there's a lot that is going on, and you're going to have the school stuff structure that's going to be set in place. Here's your internship hours, and here's the hours that you have your classes. But definitely make sure that in other places in there, you're scheduling exercise, you're scheduling social time, you're scheduling your TV shows. That might just be me. But you are making sure that you've got multiple outlets and things that are incorporated in there, because if you make your entire schedule all about grad school, you will burn out. And burnout's a big thing in this profession anyway. You do not want to get burned out before you've even fully started working as a therapist. So absolutely work on that. So I hope that this episode was helpful in learning a little bit more about the structure of grad school and giving you some personal tips on what worked and what didn't work for me. And maybe that will help when you're choosing your own internships, or you are looking into your own grad school programs, or even if you've been out of this for a while, but you've got interns coming in, or you've got your own experiences that you were like, God, that was really strange. That maybe this will be some validation that not every program's perfect. Not every person's experience in their programs are perfect. And some of us have to work a little bit harder to build the foundation that we maybe didn't fully get while we were in grad school, which is why I have this entire channel. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that this was informative. Like I said, I'm going to have some other guests in the future that talk about their grad school experiences, so you could get a wide range of what different programs look like and felt like for a lot of people. So if you want to stay tuned and stay on top of what the new episodes are, definitely subscribe below. And thank you for watching The Keys to Therapy.